The boy woke up on the cold, hard pavement, pulling his thin coat tighter around his small frame. The city was quiet in the early morning, and he could see his breath in the cold air. He had slept under a bridge, huddled with a worn-out blanket he had found in a trash bin. His stomach growled, reminding him that he had nothing to eat yet. He looked around at the bustling streets he usually avoided, hoping someone might throw him a coin or spare him some food. But today he had other plans. Today he wanted to find a piano. He had loved music for as long as he could remember. When he was very young, he had once seen a piano in a community center. The sound had amazed him, and he had been drawn to it as if it spoke directly to his heart. From that day on, he dreamed of playing it himself, of touching the keys and letting the music flow from his hands. But life had never been kind. He had no home, no family, and no money. Still, he never let go of his dream. He walked through the city streets, his shoes worn thin, feeling the cold seep through his socks. He passed by coffee shops and bakeries where the smell of fresh bread and pastries made his stomach ache even more. He knew he had no money for breakfast, but he kept going. Somewhere in the city he knew there was a piano, and today he would find it. After hours of walking, he found himself outside a large building with tall glass windows. Inside, he could see a grand piano, shining under the warm lights. His heart skipped a beat. This was it. This was the kind of piano he had always dreamed of. He pressed his face against the glass, watching as the keys glistened. He imagined his fingers dancing across them, the music flowing like a river. A man in a suit walked past him and gave him a curious look. He was tall and well-dressed, with an air of importance that made the boy feel small. But he didn't care. He had to play the piano even if it was only for a moment. The boy looked around, saw that the coast was clear, and slowly pushed the door open. It wasn't locked. He slipped inside quietly, careful not to draw attention. The warmth of the building hit him, and he shivered as he walked toward the grand piano. His hands hovered over the keys for a moment. He had never played a real piano before, but he knew the notes in his mind. He closed his eyes and let his fingers find their way. The first notes were soft, almost hesitant. But as he continued, the music grew stronger, more confident. He played a melody he had imagined 1,000 times in his head, and for a moment, the world outside disappeared. The sounds filled the room, echoing off the high ceilings, and he felt as if he had finally found a place where he belonged. Suddenly, a loud laugh broke the silence. The boy opened his eyes to see a man standing a few feet away, watching him. He was the man who had passed by outside, and now he was laughing, pointing at him. The boy froze, embarrassed and afraid. The man stepped closer, still laughing. "You think you can play that piano?" the man said, his voice full of amusement. "Look at you, a homeless boy trying to touch a grand piano. How ridiculous." The boy's face turned red, but he didn't stop playing. He wanted to show the man that he could, that he deserved to be there. He played the melody louder, pouring all his emotion into it. He remembered the nights he had spent imagining this moment, the hunger, the cold, the loneliness. All of it fueled his music. The man stopped laughing for a moment and looked at him more closely. There was something in the boy's playing that caught his attention. It wasn't perfect, but it was full of passion, full of life. The man's smile faded, replaced by a look of curiosity. The boy finished the piece and looked up, nervous. The man was still standing there, studying him. For a moment, the boy thought he might be scolded or thrown out. But instead, the man nodded. "You have talent," he said, his tone softer now. "But talent alone won't get you far in this world." The boy nodded, understanding. He had known that all along. Talent was not enough. He needed an opportunity, someone to believe in him, or he would remain invisible like he had been all his life. The man turned and walked away, leaving the boy standing by the piano. He felt a mix of disappointment and determination. He knew that playing for the man hadn't been enough, but he also knew that he had been seen. Someone had noticed him, even if only for a moment. Over the next few days, the boy returned to the building whenever he could. Sometimes he watched the piano from outside, Sometimes he managed to slip in and play quietly when no one was around. Each time he practiced, each time he imagined the day when he would own a piano of his own. He found small ways to survive. He collected bottles and cans to sell, asked for food from kind strangers, and slept wherever he could find shelter. Despite the hardships, he never gave up on his dream. Every note he played, every melody he imagined, kept his hope alive. One rainy evening, he found himself huddled under the awning of a closed shop. The rain poured down, soaking his clothes and chilling him to the bone. He shivered, thinking about the piano and the man who had laughed at him. But he refused to let despair take over. He pulled out a small notebook he had found and began to write down melodies, imagining the sound of the piano as he did. Music kept him warm when nothing else could. Days turned into weeks, and the boy's persistence began to pay off. People in the neighborhood started to notice him, the boy who always hummed tunes and sketched music on scraps of paper. Some offered him food, others gave him small coins. He learned to navigate the city, finding the safest places to sleep and the quietest places to practice. One afternoon, he heard news that the billionaire pianist would be visiting the city for a charity event. The boy's heart raced. This was his chance, the opportunity he had been waiting for. He didn't know how he would get close to the billionaire, but he knew he had to try. He imagined standing before the man, showing him his true talent, and finally being recognized. He spent every free moment practicing, his fingers learning to dance over imaginary keys, his mind filled with the music he longed to create. The dream of owning a piano grew stronger each day, and with it, his determination. He knew that one day he would tell the man, "Sir, I am the new owner of this piano," and the world would see him for who he really was. For now, he continued his struggle, surviving on the streets, dreaming of the day when his music would be heard, when his talent would be recognized, and when the cold nights and empty stomachs would be a thing of the past. Every note he imagined, every melody he played in his mind, brought him closer to that dream. And in his heart, he knew that he would never give up, no matter how hard life tried to stop him. The city was alive with the sounds of cars, chatter, and footsteps as the boy made his way toward the building where he had seen the grand piano. The air was chilly, but he hardly noticed. His mind was filled with music and hope. He had spent days imagining this moment, planning exactly how he would get inside and play again. He knew it would not be easy, but he was determined. As he approached the building, he paused to watch from a distance. Through the tall glass windows, he could see people dressed in fine clothes, walking past the shiny pianos, talking and laughing. His heart ached. He felt the sharp contrast between his life and theirs. They had comfort, warmth, and money, while he had nothing but his music and his dreams. But the ache soon turned into determination. He would not let his situation define him. The boy waited until most of the visitors had left before slipping inside. The warmth hit him again, and he breathed in deeply. The scent of polished wood and fresh music filled the room. He made his way to the grand piano, feeling a thrill he could not explain. He lifted the lid and gently placed his fingers on the keys. The cold touch of the ivory made his heart race. He started playing softly, letting the notes fill the room. He closed his eyes and imagined the melodies he had written in his notebook, letting them guide his fingers. The music was gentle at first, then it grew stronger and more confident. He felt a sense of freedom, as if the piano was a bridge to another world, a world where he was not hungry, cold, or invisible. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps startled him. He looked up to see the man who had laughed at him the first time. The billionaire stood there with a curious expression, watching the boy play. The boy froze, feeling a mix of fear and hope. He expected laughter or scolding, but this time, the man said nothing. He just watched, his eyes fixed on the boy's hands and the music flowing from them. The boy continued playing, letting his emotions pour into every note. He thought of the nights spent in the cold, the hunger, and the loneliness. He thought of the kindness he had received from strangers and the small joys that kept him alive. Every memory, every feeling became part of the music. It was raw and imperfect, but it was full of life. When he finished, the room was silent. The boy looked up, holding his breath. The man was smiling, a small, thoughtful smile. He stepped closer, and the boy felt a mixture of fear and excitement. "You play with more than just skill," the man said. "You play with your heart. That is something money cannot buy." The boy's eyes widened. No one had ever said something like that to him. Most people ignored him or looked down on him because of his appearance. This man, a wealthy and powerful figure, had just recognized the music inside him. It was a moment he would never forget. But the man's next words were careful, almost serious. "Talent alone is not enough. The world is not kind, and it will not give you what you deserve unless you fight for it. Are you ready to fight?" The boy nodded, though he did not fully understand what the man meant. He only knew that he wanted a chance, a real chance to show the world who he was. The man left, and the boy was alone again with the piano. He felt a spark of determination that he had never felt before. He would fight. He would find a way to turn his dream into reality. He played again, longer this time, letting his music fill the space and his heart. Over the next few weeks, the boy became more daring. He found quiet moments to slip into the building and practice. Sometimes the janitor would notice him, but he never reported him. Instead, he watched with curiosity, perhaps remembering his own youth, or simply touched by the boy's passion. The boy also found other ways to survive. He collected recyclables, did small chores for a few coins, and accepted food from kind strangers. He learned to move quickly and quietly, avoiding anyone who might chase him away. Every night, he returned to his makeshift shelter, tired but hopeful, and practiced music in his mind. One day, he heard from a street musician that the billionaire pianist would be hosting a small charity concert in the city. His heart leaped. This was the opportunity he had been waiting for. He had no ticket, no invitation, nothing but hope and determination. But he refused to give up. He began to plan, imagining how he might get close enough to perform or at least be noticed. As the concert day approached, the boy practiced tirelessly. He worked on perfecting his melodies in his head and on the old broken piano he had found in a community center. He imagined standing in front of the grand piano, performing for the audience, and finally being recognized. The thought of it gave him energy even when his body was exhausted. On the day of the concert, he arrived early. The city streets were crowded with people heading to the event. He hung back, blending in with the crowd, watching as wealthy guests entered the venue. His heart pounded in his chest. He had no ticket, but he knew he could not let this chance slip away. He noticed a side entrance that seemed less guarded. He waited until the security guard was distracted, then slipped through quickly. Inside, the building was filled with music, laughter, and lights. He hid behind a curtain, observing the scene. The grand piano stood on the stage, shining under the spotlights. His heart ached with longing. This was his moment and he had to seize it. He practiced silently, imagining each note as if he were playing on the stage itself. The music became stronger in his mind, clearer, more precise. He visualized the audience watching him, and the thought made him shiver with excitement. Suddenly, he felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned quickly to see a young staff member looking at him with surprise. "What are you doing here?" the staff member asked. I just want to play," the boy whispered, his voice trembling. The staff member hesitated, then nodded slightly. "Follow me," he said. "I can't promise anything, but maybe there's a chance." The boy followed, his heart racing. He could see the stage ahead, the grand piano waiting. He stepped onto the platform, hands shaking, and sat before the instrument. The audience did not yet see him. This was his chance to prove that he belonged here. He took a deep breath and began to play. The first notes were soft, almost hesitant, but soon the melody grew stronger. It was a song he had imagined countless times, full of emotion and hope. The audience began to notice, and whispers spread through the room. People paused, turning to see the source of the beautiful music. The billionaire pianist, seated at the front, looked up. His eyes widened as he saw the boy, small and ragged, playing the grand piano with a passion and skill that left him speechless. He leaned forward, studying the boy's hands, the way the music flowed, the intensity in his eyes. When the final note faded, the room was silent. The audience stared, stunned by the raw talent before them. The boy looked up, breathless and trembling, expecting criticism or laughter. But the billionaire pianist rose to his feet, clapping slowly. Then the applause grew, filling the room. The boy could hardly believe it. For the first time in his life he felt seen, recognized, and appreciated. The music had carried him beyond the streets, beyond the hunger and cold, and into a world where dreams could come true. And in his heart, he knew that this was only the beginning. His journey was far from over, but he had taken the first step toward his dream, and nothing could stop him now. The boy could hardly sleep that night. His mind was alive with the memory of the concert and the feeling of the piano keys beneath his fingers. For the first time, he felt that the world might actually notice him, that the years of struggle and hunger could lead to something more. He sat huddled in his corner under the bridge, the cold night air biting at his skin, but he felt warmth inside. Hope had never felt so real. He woke early the next day and wandered the streets with a purpose. His steps were lighter, his mind sharper. He was no longer just surviving, he was moving with a plan. He thought about the man who had laughed at him at first but had later clapped and noticed his talent. The billionaire had seen something in him, something that others had ignored. The boy knew he had to live up to that moment. Over the next few days, he practiced in every quiet corner he could find. Sometimes in abandoned buildings, sometimes on old pianos left in community centers. He watched people walk by, always careful to avoid drawing attention, yet letting the music grow within him. Each note was a lesson in perseverance, each melody a step closer to his dream. Word began to spread about the boy who could play with such feeling and intensity. Street musicians spoke of him, neighbors whispered about his talent, and even small local papers wrote short notes about the young boy who played as if he were born to do it. The boy listened quietly to the whispers, feeling a strange mix of pride and nervousness. Recognition was new and strange, yet deeply satisfying. One afternoon, while scavenging for bottles to exchange for a few coins, he overheard a conversation about a new music competition for young talents. The prize was not only a piano but a chance to study with some of the best instructors in the country. His heart leapt. This was the opportunity he had been waiting for. A chance to finally step into a world that had always seemed beyond his reach. But the boy knew it would not be easy. He had no formal education, no resources, and no guidance. Every day was a battle for survival. And now he had to compete with children who had music lessons, practice rooms, and encouragement from their families. He felt the weight of the challenge, but he also felt a fire that could not be extinguished. He had talent, determination, and the hunger to succeed. He began practicing with more focus than ever. He would close his eyes and imagine the competition stage, the grand piano, the audience, and the judges watching him. Every note had to be perfect, yet full of emotion. He played melodies he had created in his head, refining them, making them stronger, more expressive. His fingers grew stronger, more confident, as if the piano had been part of him all along. Days passed quickly. The boy learned to manage his time carefully, balancing survival with preparation. He found small jobs helping local shops, carrying groceries and running errands, earning a few coins here and there. The work was hard, and his body ached, but he never complained. Each coin brought him closer to the dream, each effort a step toward the piano he longed to own. The night before the competition, he found a quiet corner under the bridge to sleep. He lay on his thin blanket, listening to the city around him, and imagined standing on the competition stage. He pictured the audience, the judges, and the grand piano waiting for him. His heart raced with excitement and fear. He knew this was his chance, the moment that could change everything. When the morning came, he woke before the sun. He washed his face in a small fountain, combed his hair as best as he could, and straightened his worn coat. He carried his small notebook filled with melodies and a few coins for emergencies. He walked to the competition hall, each step bringing a mixture of nervousness and determination. He had come so far, and now the world would see what he could do. The hall was grand and intimidating. Children with well-polished shoes, new suits, and confident smiles filled the room. The boy felt a pang of self-consciousness. His coat was worn, his shoes were old, and his appearance could not hide the years of struggle etched into his face. He took a deep breath and reminded himself that the music inside him was stronger than appearances. This was his moment and nothing else mattered. He waited backstage, listening as others performed. Some were impressive, skilled, and polished. The boy felt a mix of admiration and determination. He watched their performances, learning from them, feeling the energy of the stage. When it was finally his turn, his heart pounded so hard he thought it might burst. But he reminded himself to breathe, to focus on the music that had carried him through so many hardships. He stepped onto the stage and saw the grand piano waiting for him. The audience was quiet, and the judges stared, curious about the small boy who looked so fragile yet so determined. He sat before the piano, opened his notebook, and let his fingers find the keys. The first notes were soft, hesitant, yet full of feeling. As he continued, the music grew, filling the room with a melody that spoke of struggle, hope, and dreams. The audience leaned in, captivated by the emotion in the music. The boy's story, though untold, was clear in every note. He had suffered, he had fought, and he had never given up. The music carried all of that, and the listeners felt it deeply. The judges exchanged glances, their eyes widening with surprise and admiration. When he finished, the hall was silent for a moment, as if everyone was holding their breath. Then, applause erupted, loud and genuine. The boy's heart soared. For the first time, he felt the weight of recognition, the joy of being seen not as a homeless child but as a talented musician. The judges nodded, smiling, clearly impressed. The boy bowed, his cheeks flushed with a mixture of relief and pride. After the competition, people approached him, praising his performance. Some offered food, others encouragement, and a few asked where he had learned to play so beautifully. The boy smiled quietly, accepting the kindness but knowing that this was only the beginning. His journey was far from over, but this day had shown him that persistence, talent, and heart could open doors he had never imagined. The billionaire, who had been in the audience, watched quietly from the side. He had remembered the boy from the concert weeks ago. He had laughed initially but now saw the boy's determination, skill, and growth. There was a spark in his eyes, a recognition that this child, once overlooked and underestimated, had something extraordinary. That evening, the boy returned to his corner under the bridge, exhausted but happy. He thought about the day's events, the applause, the smiles, and the encouragement. He thought about the grand piano, the competition, and the people who had finally noticed him. He realized that while he had played beautifully, it was his perseverance that had truly carried him. Music was his gift, but determination had brought him to this moment. As he drifted off to sleep, he imagined the future. He imagined a life where he could play every day, where he could share his music with the world, and where he would finally have a place to call his own. He thought about the piano he had seen, the one that had sparked his dreams long ago, and he whispered to himself that one day, it would be his. The road ahead was long, but for the first time, he felt ready to walk it, knowing that every step, every note, and every struggle had led him here, closer than ever to the life he had always dreamed of. The boy woke early, his body sore from sleeping on the hard ground, but his heart full of anticipation. Today was the day he would return to the place where he had first touched the grand piano, the place that had started his journey. He wanted to show that he had grown, that he had improved, and that he deserved to be recognized not just as a talented street musician, but as someone who could play with emotion and mastery. He walked through the city streets, careful to avoid the busy crowds and the officers who sometimes moved children along. He carried his small notebook with melodies he had been practicing for weeks. Each melody was a story of struggle, hope, and determination. He imagined playing them on the grand piano, letting the notes echo through the building, capturing the attention of everyone who listened. As he approached the building, he paused. The grand piano was visible through the large glass windows, shining under the sunlight. Memories of the first time he had played there rushed back, the laughter, the doubt, and the surprise of being noticed. He took a deep breath, straightened his coat, and walked inside quietly. The warmth of the building wrapped around him like a familiar hug, and he felt a strange comfort. This was where he belonged. He made his way to the piano, touching the keys gently. The feel of the polished ivory brought a smile to his face. He closed his eyes and began to play, letting the melodies flow freely. The music was richer now, more confident, filled with the experiences of his past weeks. The practice, the competition, the encouragement from strangers, and the quiet moments of reflection. Each note told a story of resilience, of never giving up, and of dreaming beyond limits. He did not notice the man entering the room until a deep voice interrupted him. "You've improved." The boy looked up to see the billionaire standing there, watching him closely. His eyes were not laughing this time. They were serious, studying every movement, every expression. The boy's fingers trembled slightly, but he continued playing, letting the music speak. He did not want to explain himself with words. He wanted the music to tell the story. The billionaire listened, his expression changing as the notes filled the room. There was passion, there was struggle, and there was hope. The boy had not only improved technically but had learned to infuse his soul into every note. When the piece ended, the room was silent for a moment. The billionaire stepped closer, examining the boy. "You've been practicing," he said, his tone a mixture of admiration and curiosity. "But talent alone does not guarantee success. You need opportunity, guidance, and determination. Are you ready to take the next step?" The boy nodded, feeling a surge of confidence. He was ready to take the challenge, ready to step beyond the streets and into a world that had seemed impossible. The billionaire smiled faintly and gestured for the boy to follow him. He led the boy to a private room filled with more instruments, teaching materials, and a few assistants. It was clear that the man was offering guidance, resources, and a chance that few could ever dream of. For the next several days, the boy immersed himself in music like never before. The billionaire introduced him to instructors who helped refine his technique, showing him ways to express emotion through music and improve his speed, accuracy, and understanding of rhythm. The boy absorbed everything, practicing tirelessly, often late into the night. Every correction, every suggestion was taken seriously. He had no distractions, no pressures of survival for those hours. It was only him, the piano, and the music. The boy's days became a balance of intense practice and moments of reflection. He would walk the streets at night, observing life, listening to the rhythms of the city, and translating them into music. The sounds of footsteps, cars, conversations, and distant laughter all found a place in his melodies. His music was no longer just a reflection of dreams. It had become a mirror of life itself. Weeks passed, and the boy's skill grew rapidly. The billionaire noticed the improvement and decided it was time to present him in a public performance. There was a small charity event planned, and the boy would play a piece he had prepared. It was an opportunity to show the world his talent, to be recognized for what he truly was, and perhaps to finally change his life. The day of the performance arrived. The boy felt a mixture of excitement and nerves. He had played for small audiences before, but this was different. This was the first time he would play for an audience that included influential people, critics, and music enthusiasts. He wanted to be perfect, yet he reminded himself that the music came from his heart, and that was more important than perfection. He took his place at the grand piano, feeling the smooth keys beneath his fingers. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and began to play. The notes flowed effortlessly, carrying with them the struggles of the streets, the hope of dreams, and the fire of determination. The audience was captivated, leaning forward as if drawn into the music. The boy's soul poured into every note, telling a story without words. When the final chord resonated, the room erupted in applause. The billionaire smiled proudly, seeing the boy's hard work and dedication come to life. People approached him, offering praise, admiration, and encouragement. The boy's cheeks flushed with pride and humility. He realized that he had not only played beautifully but had communicated something deeper, something that touched everyone who listened. After the performance, the billionaire spoke to the boy privately. "You've shown more than talent. You've shown character, perseverance, and a willingness to grow. That is what makes someone truly remarkable." The boy nodded, understanding that this was the acknowledgement he had longed for. It was not just about playing piano. It was about showing the world that he had the courage to rise above circumstances. The days following the performance were filled with new experiences. The boy began receiving invitations to perform at small events, participate in workshops, and learn from experienced musicians. Each opportunity was a stepping stone, building his confidence, skills, and reputation. He no longer felt invisible. He was seen, appreciated, and respected. Even as his world expanded, he never forgot his roots. He continued to help other children in the neighborhood, shared food when he could, and played music for those who could not afford it. His story inspired others, showing that talent, perseverance, and kindness could overcome adversity. One evening, as he sat at the piano alone in the room the billionaire had arranged for him, he thought about the journey so far. From sleeping under bridges and struggling for food to playing on a grand piano with guidance and recognition, he had come a long way. The dream of owning a piano of his own still burned brightly, but now it felt achievable. He knew that every challenge he had faced had prepared him for this moment, and he was ready for whatever came next. He practiced late into the night, each melody richer, each note more expressive. The piano became a friend, a companion, and a source of strength. Music was no longer just a dream. It was a path, a way to connect with the world, and a tool to create a life he had always imagined. He knew the journey was not over, but for the first time he felt a sense of control, of purpose, and of belonging. The boy looked out the window at the city lights, thinking about the streets he had walked, the struggles he had endured, and the people who had believed in him. He whispered to himself, promising that he would never forget where he came from. Music had given him a voice, but determination had given him a future. And as he touched the piano keys, feeling their familiar resistance and resonance, he knew that his story was only just beginning. The boy woke up before dawn, his heart racing with excitement. Today was the day that everything he had dreamed of for years could finally come true. He had worked tirelessly, practiced endlessly, and endured every hardship with determination. Now he would show the world, and himself, that he belonged at the piano he had once only imagined. He walked through the quiet streets of the city, clutching his notebook and a few essentials. The cold morning air bit at his face, but it could not chill the warmth in his heart. He passed familiar corners and alleys, places where he had slept, scavenged, and dreamed. Each step reminded him of the journey that had brought him here, a journey filled with struggle, perseverance, and hope. As he approached the building where the grand piano waited, he paused for a moment, taking in the sight. The polished instrument gleamed under the morning light, as if calling to him. He remembered the first time he had touched it, the laughter, the doubt, and the unexpected recognition. Today he would reclaim it not as a street boy, but as someone who had earned his place. The door opened easily, and the warmth of the building enveloped him. He made his way to the piano, his fingers brushing lightly over the keys. Memories of past struggles, small victories, and the music he had created filled him with emotion. He closed his eyes and began to play, letting the melodies flow effortlessly. The music was rich, full of passion, hope, and resilience, reflecting every step of his journey. Suddenly, a familiar voice interrupted him. The billionaire who had once laughed at him stood nearby, watching quietly. The boy froze, but then realized that the man's expression was different this time. There was no amusement, only admiration and curiosity. The boy took a deep breath and continued, letting the music speak for him. The billionaire stepped closer, his eyes scanning every movement, every expression. "You have come a long way," he said softly. But talent and hard work alone are not enough. Are you ready for what comes next? The boy nodded, feeling a surge of determination. He was ready. He had faced hunger, cold, and doubt. He had overcome fear, embarrassment, and obstacles that seemed impossible. Now he was ready to claim the piano, the symbol of his dreams and his journey. The billionaire smiled and gestured toward the piano. Then this is yours. Play as you have always imagined, and let the world hear who you are. The boy's heart leapt. He could hardly believe it. He had dreamed of this moment for years, and now it was real. He sat at the piano, feeling the smooth keys beneath his fingers. He took a deep breath and began to play, pouring his soul into the music. The notes echoed through the room, carrying the story of his life, his struggles, and his dreams. The billionaire listened intently, his expression one of awe and respect. He had seen many talented musicians, but few played with such raw emotion and authenticity. The boy's music told a story that words could not capture. A story of perseverance, hope, and the triumph of spirit. When the final note faded, the room was silent for a moment. Then, applause erupted, filling the space with warmth and recognition. The boy's cheeks flushed with pride and humility. He had not only played beautifully but had communicated something deeper, something that touched everyone who listened. The billionaire approached him, extending a hand. You have earned this piano, and you have earned your place in the world of music. Never forget the journey that brought you here. The boy shook the hand firmly, feeling a sense of accomplishment and gratitude. He looked around the room, seeing the expressions of admiration and respect from those who had once overlooked him. For the first time, he felt truly seen, recognized not just for his talent, but for his courage, determination, and heart. In the days that followed, the boy began to learn more about the piano and the opportunities it could bring. He met instructors, fellow musicians, and mentors who helped him refine his skills and explore new possibilities. He played at small concerts, charity events, and local gatherings, each performance strengthening his confidence and reputation. Despite the recognition, he remained humble. He remembered the streets, the nights under bridges, the hunger, and the cold. He continued to help others, offering guidance, encouragement, and even music lessons to children who dreamed as he once had. His journey inspired many, showing that talent, perseverance, and a kind heart could overcome even the harshest circumstances. One afternoon, as he sat at his piano in a quiet room filled with sunlight, he thought about how far he had come. The boy who had once been homeless, unnoticed, and struggling for survival was now the proud owner of a piano, recognized for his talent and determination. He smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment and purpose. He played a melody he had composed himself, a song that told the story of his journey. Each note carried the memories of the streets, the struggles, the moments of hope, and the triumphs that had defined his path. The music was alive, vibrant, and filled with emotion, reflecting the heart of someone who had never given up. As he finished, he looked out the window at the city he had once wandered, a city that had seemed cold and unwelcoming. Now it felt like home, a place where dreams could take root and grow. He knew that his journey was not over. There would always be new challenges, new melodies to create, and new opportunities to embrace. But he also knew that he had proven to himself and to the world that he was capable, resilient, and deserving. That evening, he returned to the building where he had first played the piano for the billionaire. The memory of that day, the laughter, the doubt, and the first recognition, was vivid in his mind. He sat at the grand piano once more, fingers hovering over the keys. He whispered to himself, promising never to forget where he had come from and the journey that had shaped him. He began to play, letting the music flow freely. Each note was a testament to perseverance, hope, and the power of dreams. He played for himself, for the people who had believed in him, and for every child who had ever felt invisible or hopeless. The music filled the room, echoing through the halls, carrying the story of a boy who had risen from the streets to own his destiny. The billionaire watched from a distance, smiling. He had laughed once, not knowing the boy's potential, but now he understood. The boy had faced every obstacle, every doubt, and every challenge with courage and determination. And now, he had not only mastered the piano but had mastered the path to his dreams. As the last note faded, the boy sat quietly, feeling a deep sense of peace. He had achieved what he had once thought impossible. The piano was no longer just an instrument. It was a symbol of his journey, his struggles, and his triumphs. He had turned his dreams into reality, and in doing so, he had inspired others to believe in the power of perseverance, hope, and hard work. The boy stood, looking at the piano one last time that evening, and whispered, "This is only the beginning." He knew that life would continue to challenge him, but he also knew that he had the strength, talent, and heart to face whatever came next. He had proven that no matter how difficult the journey, dreams could be achieved, and the impossible could become real.